Hi, now we're going to, in this iOS video, we're going to talk about properties and synthesizing properties. Now, remember our part class from our previous example, our object example. What we're going to do is make properties out of these ivars. So instead of using car star name and int number as ivars, we're going to make them into properties. Now, this is going to give us a lot of neat capability. We're going to end up getting rid of a lot of stuff here. So the first thing I want to do is review what we've done in main.m to access this. We have part alloc init. That's not going to change. We have a set name and a set number. That doesn't have to change. But I've also added a reporting function, or a report method, to the part class. So we'll look at that pretty quickly. First of all, in part.h, I've declared it as a method returning void, just called report, so it has no parameters. And in part.m, I'm just printing out there are however many number of whatever the name is. Now, look at this syntax. This is a little bit different. I have self.number and self.name. So I'm calling getters, but what am I calling them on? I am calling them on the object instance of this class. So self is what we use. In many other languages, that keyword would be this. In Objective-C, the keyword is self. It is not the class part. It is the instance of class part that is being used. So report is an instance method. So I'm calling this on self. Now, I can't just say number, because number is an ivar right now. I can't just say number. I have to say self number. I have to send the number message to myself, and then that will give me the number method. All right, so now in part.h, the first thing I'm going to do, and we might get some error messages here in the interim, but I'm going to make a property. And I'm going to make this property have a couple of attributes. The first thing I'm going to do is say non-atomic. And the second thing I'm going to do is say assign. Now, we remember from our discussion that non-atomic refers to the fact that I don't want this property to have to worry about, or it doesn't need to worry about, thread safe kind of code in its getters and setters. So non-atomic just means not thread safe. And assign means just assign it because I'm using a scalar C type, not instead of an object type. So my first ivar here was a car star, and it was called name. So now I'm going to make another property for number. Property, again, non-atomic and assign. And it's an int, and it's called number. All right. Now the first thing I can do here is get rid of my ivar declarations altogether. I've made them properties. All right. Now I'm going to go into my implementation file and synthesize them. So at synthesize, and I'm going to synthesize name and number. Now, watch what happens here. What can I do? Well, making a property actually creates name and number as a car star and an int. It also says that there will be a setter and a getter for these. Well, I have a setter and a getter for name, and a setter and a getter for number. Synthesizing these properties actually creates the setter and the getter. So now what can I do? I can completely get rid of these. So I'm getting rid of the setters and the getters because synthesizing my properties actually creates setters and getters. It creates them with assign characteristics. In other words, I'm using scalar types here, so I can just assign them in my setters, and the getters just return those. So synthesizing properties actually creates getters and setters. Now we can still define getters and setters for these properties, but they are overriding the existing getters and setters that are created by synthesize. Now there is one other thing that happens here that is really neat, and it's dot syntax. So making a property actually gives us access to dot syntax. So I don't need to call the number method. The number method still exists. It's the getter. I can actually just say self.number, and that will call the getter. Okay. And if I do that, I'm not sending a message. I'm just calling a getter. I can also do the same thing with name. So there we go, dot syntax in action. Much cleaner, much nicer. So now in my main file, what can I do here? Well, I still have set name and set number. There's nothing wrong with that. And if I run this kind of proves, there are 37 widgets because I have set the name to widget and set the number to 37. That proves that the synthesize is creating a setter named set name and a getter named name. Well, let's simplify this a little bit more. Let's just say part A dot name equals widget. Will that work? Sure it will. This is calling the setter on part A and with the parameter widget. So this is the same thing. This is nice. This is dot syntax in action. Likewise, I can say part A dot number equals 37. So we have dot syntax, and this is nice. We have dot syntax because we have properties. We have setters and getters because we synthesized those properties. Now, I still have to send the report message to part A, and this is Objective-C syntax. This is good. The report message is a method call on part A. And remember, report is just doing the printf for us. So in object-oriented programming, it's very common for the part or whatever class that we are modeling in the real world to be able to tell about itself. And that's what we're doing here with the report method. So now we'll clear the output window, and again, we'll run it. We say our dot syntax works. Part A.name is equal to widget. Part A.number is equal to 37. And this is an example of calling the setter using dot syntax. And then, in my report function, I'm calling the getter to get those values back out. So this is properties kind of in a nutshell. Obviously, there's more to properties when we start using classes and objects as our property definitions. Then this word here, this keyword assign, is going to change, but that'll come a little bit later. Thank you very much.